Hello! Today I will go into the differences between Above and Below Haunted and the original one, but if you're not familiar with either of those, I will give a brief overview of the rules. The main idea of Above and Below is that you have your characters on your player board, and each turn you will exhaust one or more of those characters by sliding over to the right, to the moon, and then you do an action. The possible actions are at the top of your board, and they slightly differ depending on which version you are playing. The icons at the top of your people, they indicate what they can do, of what they are better at. If there is a hammer, they are the only ones who can build the buildings. And we have a lot of endgame buildings that are always available. We have some cards that start the game, those are the key buildings, and they might vary, but there are only 5 of them in this game. These are not replenished either. And then we have some buildings that we draw, and they will vary throughout the game. So we have 4 buildings above the ground and 4 buildings below the ground, which we also call the outposts. If your person has a feather icon, you can hire new people. This is a big difference between the original one and the new one. You have to pay the price that is below it, that is the same. But if you pick one of the first 3, which are sheep, then you will become haunted. You take a ghost and put it on one of your buildings, if possible. If all your buildings have 1 ghost, it is not possible anymore. But if you take one of the 2 right characters, the more expensive ones, you also get a mystic brew, and these will help you make your people available again at the end of the round. But the main action, of course, that everyone wants to do is send some people to explore. That is this action, and you see it here as well. You need at least 2 people, so I can send all 3 of them even, and the icons don't matter at the moment, but the numbers on the dice do. So let's say I sent them all. That is my only action then for this first round, because I will tire them all. But first, before I do that, I have to pick one of the cards to explore. And in the base game, you have only 1 pile, so that's a difference. But here you have the easy pile, the basic caves, and you have the advanced pile with a snake on it. And you see the numbers that you have to achieve with the dice you throw are much lower here than they are there. So at the start of the game, you always have to pick the base card, because it's not possible to succeed at the other ones. Then you put the people on the card and you throw a dice to determine which story you will read. In this case, it's number 3. That's a coincidence. Then I'll take the book of stories, and then I'll go to number 3. You may see it as a spoiler, but there are many stories in this book, and if you want to have an idea, just listen carefully to what I will read. A fishfolk angler sits in the ancient boat. If you don't know what fishfolks are, you can go to the first pages, and there you have an overview of all the different races, I would say, that are available in this game, that you will encounter during these playing sessions. And the fishfolks are very famous because they were also in the first game. Fishfolk have blue and blue-green skin with yellow-green fins, hairs and ears. They can breathe underwater and are expert swimmers. They average 4 to 6 feet tall and prefer living near water, above or below ground. Many fishfolk live a wayfaring life, traveling in caravans and living far away from the crowds and chaos of the cities. So they're a little bit timid. I believe in the original Above and Below there were characters that you can hire in for your village that were fishfolk. I don't think they are in this game. However, let's continue the story. So an ancient boat, his wrinkled fingers gripping an ancient scroll, his ancient beard drooping into the dark waters of an underground lake. I can't remember if these scrawled runes are a recipe for mushroom cake or if they summon a hungry demon, and I can barely see them anymore. Can you read them for me, he asks. So, mushroom cake or a hungry demon? That's a big difference. So now you have the option, and that is if someone else reads it, he will read the option and says the explorer number. but if there is a bonus, what you can get as a reward, it is not like here you have a reward and a bonus. You don't read that part. But now we have the option read the scroll or destroy the scroll. If it's a hungry demon, I would do the latter. So you need Explorer 4 or 2. Let's say we go for the Explorer 4. Then we have another story that we can read, but we first have to succeed at this part of the story. So what do we do for each of our characters? And there's not a big difference in the previous Above and Below or the Above and Below Haunted. You just roll a die, but I always say up front is the first one you roll is for the left character, and so on. And now you have to collect a number of lanterns, and Explorer 4 means I need at least 4. So I roll the 3. Starting from 2, I have 1 lantern with this character, so that's 1. I roll the 2. I didn't roll the 3, so I get only 1. And here I didn't roll a 4, so I get no lantern. So I have 2 lanterns. That's not enough for this action, but now the other one was Explorer 2. I cannot change that anymore. I have chosen first and then I roll. If you don't succeed, you don't keep the card in the base game, but in this game there's a big difference. You always keep this card as a consolation prize. However, so in the base game that was just bad luck, but here we have one option, at least if we already have a boat. The boats also move along like the players. If they are used, they go to the moon side of the board, and at the end of the round they return. So if I use a boat, I can change any die to a 6. And it doesn't really matter if I change this one or that one. Let's say I'll change this one. So now it's 6, and it's more than 3, so I get 2 lanterns. It's not cumulative, so the 1 lantern there I don't get. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 0, so 3 lanterns. I have also the option that's in the base game as well to injure people to get more Explorer. So I will injure this one, and when you injure someone, you put them over there. It's even further from being available again. You'll see that at the end of the round. Then I have 1 Explorer extra. So now I have 4. And then I can read the part that continues. So with a flash of sulfurous smoke, a large demon appears, wispy and ethereal, his 2 narrow eyes staring at you in the dark. So it wasn't the mushroom cake recipe. What is it you want? The recipe again? Oh, maybe it's both, says the demon in an echoey voice. The aged fishfolk angler speaks up. Yes, the mushroom cake recipe, I've forgotten it. Oh, alright, says the demon with a sigh. The angler scribbles down the demon's instructions and then sends him on his way. He thanks you for your help, giving you a small wooden box. So, reward +1 reputation, that's here at the reputation board. So I move to the next line, I would say. 1 ghost, and you always have to have some room on your buildings for them. 1 nut, so one of these things are nuts, and if you don't know, you can always look here. These are the resources, and some of them are a little bit strange, but the nut is quite obvious, of course. And if you manage to get 2 more than the number described, so in this case 6 or more, you get also the bonus. If you don't get it, the other player won't read what it was. In this case it was a boat. So I would have gotten a boat, and the stories feel maybe random, but you could possibly know that. If you remember, the fishfolk angler sits in an ancient boat. If you read something like that, there is always a possibility to get a boat. That's, in my experience, that is the logical way to think about it. It's not always true, but yeah, you can see where it's going sometimes. All the things you could possibly get is the lowest villager. So if you get a villager, if you hire one or you get one, it doesn't start in the active mode. It starts in the exhausted part of your board. So remember that. It's the same for the base games. So not a big change there. And you don't get the ghost in this case. Also, a new possibility for Above and Below Haunted is that you will receive an adventure card. They are numbered from 1 to 43, and you don't have to shuffle them at all, because you will have to look for a certain number and then you receive a card. I can show you one. I will show you this one because I know this one already. For example, a haunted clay pot. This red pot has a misty entity inside who promised wealth and power. Once per round, gain 2 coins and lose 1 reputation. So these are unique abilities that you can get. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, or are both. And there are 43 of them. I have only seen 2 of them for the moment. Compared to the base game, this gives a more unique feel of a certain session because you can get special things. Alright, I explained exploring, building, I explained hiring new people. The new thing in this game is banishing ghosts. I can banish this and all of my other ghosts if I had several. And what do? Well, you send them all to the supply, except for one. You give that one to an opponent player, and you can choose, you can pick which building you want to place the ghost in. Now, the ghost doesn't hurt the building, you can still use the building, but the reward is depending on what kind of building it is, and you can see that over here. If you put it on a building with a bed, you get a mystic brew and 3 coins. If you put it on a building without a bed, you get 2 reputation and 2 coins. If you put it on an outpost, these ones, then you get a mystic brew and a boat. So that are the options. If the other player only has haunted buildings, you cannot get the reward. And the last action is actually 2 actions combined from the base game. You had the work action, which gave you a coin, 1 coin, but it gave you some cider as well, which is comparable to a Mystic Brew, but Mystic Brew is more straightforward. I'll explain that in a moment. And you had the harvest action, and here they are 1. So you get a coin and you can harvest. Harvest means if you have a building with some kind of production. So if you, like for example, would buy this building or that building, then you would, if there is an arrow 1, if there are 2 dots, you put 2 resources on it. And if you go harvesting, you can pick one of those resources in your building that you have bought, and you can put it in your supply. However, if you send someone with a hammer, you can harvest twice. So only 1 coin still, but you can harvest both buildings, or you can harvest 1 building twice. So that's an updated version of an action of the base game. I think it's more sharp. It gives another ability for the hammer icon. I didn't mention it, but if you want to banish ghosts, you also need the quill symbol. Anyhow, those are the actions at the end of the round when each person that you have is used or injured, of course. There are a few steps to take, but the first step is new, and that is your haunted buildings. If you have them, for each ghost you have, you lose 1 reputation. So it's a new way to lose reputation. Otherwise, it was usually in the stories. Here you usually gain reputation through the stories, but you lose it because of the ghosts. Although there are some stories where you can lose reputation as well. So that's a new step. The other steps are the same as in the base game. You move the round marker, you refill the line of people. So if you buy someone, they don't move along, but at the end of the round they do, and it gets refilled. Then you have to wake up your villagers. For each bed you have, you can move 1 person to the left. You cannot move the same person twice. And after that you can use Mystic Brews as much as you want to move them along further. So I can move this one again, or if this one was still here, I could use 2 Mystic Brews even to move them twice. So that's possible, but you can only use 1 bed per person. That's important. All your boats move automatically, and if you didn't use them at the end of the round, you can actually use them to get 1 coin. It's a 6 or coin. Then you get income along to this track. You start with 3 income, which is not a lot if you have to buy buildings from 16 or 17 coins, but you can get more. And how do you do that? I have this nut. I can place it on my track. This means that all nuts are worth 1 point at the end of the game, but also my income now is 4, and that doesn't depend on the number of nuts that are here. You can earn more, even up to 11, if you have all possible resources that are in the game. So at the end of the game, you get a lot of points from your resources that you have. You can also get a lot of points from buildings, sometimes on the cheap ones, but Usually they are on the big ones. For example, here you pay 17 coins, but you get 10 points plus 1 coin for every person you have, so that it could be easily 20 points. You also get points from reputation. It's going from -7 to +7. Something new that I didn't say yet: if you are the first to get a nut, it doesn't need to be on your track, then you can use one of your cubes and put it on there. That means you are the first to get it, and it's worth 2 points if it's a uncommon resource. It is 1 point if it's a common resource, and it's 4 points if it's one of the rare resources. You see that the price here is higher, 9 for this one, 7 for this one. It is because of that. Your coins are worthless at the end of the game, but you do have possibly some pearls. The pearls you always put on the end of the track. So if I have 4 different resources, I put the pearls here, and they are both worth 3 points. How do you get the pearls? Well, if you explore successfully in a dangerous cave, you always get a pearl, in addition to what your rewards are. So that's very interesting, but also dangerous, of course. So then you know the basic rules and the main differences. Let's tell you now what I think about those changes. Okay, there is one free action that I didn't tell you about yet, and that's this one. If the resources are on your track, they are stuck, but if they're not on your track yet, you can sell a resource. If you put it here, it's available to buy for anyone. They have to pay at least 3 coins, but you can haggle for the price even. You can only pay with money, however, and I believe also mystic brews. So any combination of that. The reason that I had to check this first is because I don't use this option a lot. Actually, almost never. Certainly in a 2-player game, you don't want to help the player. But let's focus on the differences. Also, I forgot to mention, if your reputation is the highest, you get 5 points. 3 if you're second, 2 if you're last, except for when playing with 2 players, then the middle, then the 3 points are the only points that are available. But let's compare those tracks, because that's the first difference that I see. This is a vertical track, horizontal track. It's a little bit longer on the negative side because of the ghosts, of course. But in both cases, the track was a little bit small. Here we used a cube, I believe. If I'm looking at this one and I use it over there, it's bad. It's really bad. Certainly if you're with 2 on the same spot, okay, you can put the torches on top of each other, but they don't stack really good. So that's a huge problem. The board is actually the same size. Also the same size as the player boards. I think it's just an economic reason to choose that, but there's too much possibility to go wrong here, and I don't like that. I'm not a huge fan of this either. I like it that that is another way to get points. It's a little bit lucky, but if you're seeing the buildings that are worth 4 points, yeah, you definitely want to get those first. But the main problem here is, again, well, if you cover them, yeah, you don't see it anymore. And if you're on the other side of the table, it's possible that you don't see the other ones either when there is one cube on there. So it's also too small. Apart from that, all the other changes I almost like. I don't care that much about the pearls, but I get it. You can get a lot of points from the pearls also. If you explore a lot in the dangerous caves, you're certain that it gets rewarded if you succeed. You always have a pearl, which is possibly 6 points, but usually 3 or 4, maybe even 5. This is certainly a big deal, that you have 2 piles and that you know how much explore you need to get to discover a certain location. Because in the base game, you oftentimes had that you said, okay, now I'm strong, I'm gonna send 4 guys, and then you go to a story where you only need 4 explore. And that was really disappointing. So I think it's a great change that they did that. Also, the stories themselves. Original game, you didn't have a follow-up story. You only had a story to start with, and then you had a choice, you rolled your dice, and then you get a reward. Here there is usually, I think always even a follow-up story. You had to fill in the blanks actually in the base game. So that's certainly, again, an improvement. The Mystic Brews, great actually, because they simplify this whole mechanism. You had cider and another thing in the base game, potions, I believe, and you needed a potion to move from here to there and a cider from here to there. It was a little bit more complicated. Not excruciating complicated, of course, but the Mystic Brew simplifies that for sure. But really a big deal is the boat. The boat is maybe the greatest addition to this game because it's the only way to manipulate dice rolls. You had some little expansions for above and below that had some items that you could use to manipulate the dice. You had some buildings that made it possible to manipulate the dice also, but really you had to be lucky to get one of those. Here the boats are everywhere. You can get them quite easily. Even by banishing ghosts, you can always try to put it in an outpost so that you get a boat. And you see it here, 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 here. There are many boats at this moment to get. And really, the only problem I have with the boats is that you sometimes have the option between one coin and a boat. And, well, the boat is clearly better. I can certainly remember, for example, that you have this building where you get a +1 income each round. Or you get the same building, a bed and a boat. And it costs less. While it's clearly visible that a boat is better than one coin. Because it's possibly one coin and it's possibly a 6. Which can give you a lot of bonuses. So it seems like they didn't take that into account for every building that... Or maybe that's the whole idea, that some buildings are better priced than others, but that shouldn't be the case. I think this one should be 4 and the other one should be 5. If you don't believe me, it's in here. This one. And because of those little weird things, I wasn't sure that the boat was, well, usable more than once. I thought maybe you can use it once and then it goes away, but you can keep it for the rest of the game. It's really great. And then I should talk about the ghosts as well, of course. I like how they look. I remember in the Kickstarter there were some discussions that they look like penguins, but they changed that. Although I like the original look as well. I like that they're not very punishing. They are punishing when it comes to reputation, but they don't block your building or anything. It's just there, and even it can score you a lot of points. I mean, 3 points for every ghost and an additional 5 points only for 11 coins. Give me some ghosts, please. Give me some ghosts, please. I think in the base game you had a building that was overpowered. It looked a little bit like this, but it gave you 2 points for every person. I don't know what the base value here was, but that was too much because you could possibly hire each turn another person, and it would give you 2 points. 2 points that you couldn't get by any other means. And I thought that was overpowered. Usually people that are experienced gamers, they always took the building. Here it's possibly this building because it's even cheaper. And the ghosts, they don't hurt you that much. Okay, instead of 7 plus, you have -7 reputation. But is that such a big deal? Because you can always, if there is a story and you have the option to be a bad guy, it usually gets more rewarded, but you lose some reputation. If you're at the bottom of the reputation track, you can do all the bad stuff and get the rewards. And there is even a building which gives you a coin each time. This one here, it gives you a coin each time you place a ghost. So it's a very strong strategy to use them. And though it might be overpowered if you go for that strategy, I think there are counter strategies possible. If you see that someone's going for it, you have to buy that one first, of course. But I like the addition. It's simple enough, but it gives a different approach to reputation. I like it. Also, with the extras that I bought, it's not in the base game, you have the possibility to get a new starting building with only 2 beds, but an automatic harvest each round. Also, one of the big reasons I bought the game is because you can play solo now. Of course, you have to read the stories yourself and try to cover the parts that you don't want to see. But further, it's quite simple. It uses the villagers that it has. It doesn't matter which icons the villagers have. It says at the top of the card how many. So in most cases, it's 1 villager. And if he uses all villagers, then he's done for that round. The first action, it's on this card. It's depending on the round. And then you draw each turn a card, and it just says what it does. So, and you see it uses 1 villager. for your last turn, if he only has 1 villager left and there is an action where you need 2 villagers, he just does that action, but then he's done. So he can play like a normal game. He doesn't collect coins. He doesn't collect coins, but he doesn't pay coins either. So each building is free for him. And that's actually a great addition as well. So that's all I have to say about Above and Below Haunted. Do you have further questions? You can put them in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.